I think I found an easier way to cover the CBC. This is from December 23rd, 2021. The title of the article is I Knew I Had to Come Out to My Grandfather Before It Was Too Late. It starts with a sentence. I see my Guon's love in the feast we cooked the day I came out to him. That's the first line. And what they're going to go on, they are going to go on to explain is that they had a grandfather who had cancer and dementia and brain was riddled with dope, and it was somehow extremely important for them to come out as an alphabet soup of things. I forget what it is. Okay, this person's name is Shimshon Obadiah, which I'm sure is made up. It's made to sound Aboriginal. Shimshon Obadiah, and she's not, they are not Aboriginal at all. They're Chinese. So the mom calls, yeah, you heard about your mom, yeah. Gee, crackers, he's dying, isn't he? Yeah, that's right. And so she flies home from Kelowna. For some reason, they lived in Kelowna, but was from Toronto. Okay, here's the kicker. My grandfather and I had always been close before I moved from Toronto to Kelowna, BC. I'm sorry, I parsed that all wrong. My grandfather and I had always been close before I moved from Toronto to Kelowna, BC. A few years after I came out as trans, non-binary, I do not know what that means. Trans, non-binary. Trans means that you've decided that you're the opposite sex, but non-binary means you don't really fit into either one, so it's contradictory. I can sense what the person means, but okay, so they thought it was important that they explain to their grandfather what their sexuality was, and it turns out that their sexuality is pansexual and polyamorous. So polyamorous means that you slut around. Pansexual, I don't know what it means. I have no idea what that means. I came out as trans non-binary, but I'm also pansexual and polyamorous, but generally describe myself as queer. That's a good word. Queer is identity without essence. They want everyone to feel that they have an identity without an essence, because that's quite often how trans, non-binary, pansexual, polyamorous feel. And I'm not kidding, this is Judith Butler. She thinks that non-queer kids, and this is the history of what queer means. Not the history of what queer means, it's the history of the word queer. If you're not queer, then you have an advantage. So they want to make every child feel queer. They say that it's so people will be more accepting of queer people in the world, and there's probably some truth to that. But the effect they're having is to make every kid wonder what sex he is, or if he's one sex or another, or whatever. It's sort of a mixed situation here. I got a mixed mind, I'm sorry, because on the one hand, I want to understand what this says, but the other hand, I don't want to acknowledge it. I don't want to acknowledge it by trying to figure out what it means. I just don't want to. Okay. Um, okay, so Guan, his maybe he's gonna die, and you got it. The most important thing, right? You got to make sure that before your Guan dies, that you come out to them as a pansexual, transgendered, whatever. So he talks to his grandfather on the phone, and they decide to eat. They like cooking, so they decide they're going to spend the afternoon cooking. Okay, so he shows up in full regalia. Yeah, their thing. I don't. This is a guy. He shows up. You can look at the picture. This is a guy. This is a guy with a sort of schizophrenic narcissism, I would say. And so he shows up there, I think, in full regalia. Okay, there's a picture here of him in his full regalia, but maybe that wasn't what he wore to his, when he met his grandfather. Okay, there's all these good news stories about how much they cook waffles together. And so he arrives at the door, and when I got to the door, he had already heard about this stuff from his other people. Apparently, this has been a secret for like 10 years. Hey, pal, it wasn't a secret. Really unlikely. And the first word he says, I love you. And then my Guan's eyes welled up, and we both stood there embraced in his entryway, shedding tears and the weight that time and distance had placed between us. Thank goodness for waterproof makeup. You are self-absorbed to the point of narcissism, right? What else would you call it? Okay. With the early state of his dementia, combined with his intense medication regime, explaining my gender and sexuality with new words for his vocabulary, like trans, metamor. What is a metamor? I don't care. Like trans, metamor, and genderqueer took a little bit of time. Yeah, I would imagine it would. He's got dementia and cancer, and he's dying, and he's filled with dope, and you're showing up at his house dressed like a. I don't know why you would say that you're non-binary. You dress like a woman. Okay, so you show up, and years and years, this is what you say happened. With the early state of his dementia combined with his intense medication regime, explaining my gender and sexuality with new words for his vocabulary like trans, metamor, and genderqueer took a bit of time. Okay, this person wouldn't have any of these ideas, not likely, if he hadn't at some point realized that this is a good way to feel special. I remember I saw an article with an Asian woman, and she was just gay. I mean, just a gay woman. It's nothing. It's nothing in Asia. And so I think it was a Canadian reporter said, so how do your parents deal with you being gay? And she says, I never mention it to them. And they go, oh, so they're old-fashioned, and don't you try to teach them this or that? And she said, no, I respect them. I respect that they are not comfortable that I sleep with women, so I don't tell them about it. Okay? Okay, is that all right? So then, anyway, they cook a bunch of food and eat and recipes, and then it goes into like a whole big thing about frickin' recipes. Though my Guan was fairly lucid, processing new information can often still be a difficult task. While he didn't say much when I was done, he showed me his love and acceptance right away. And that's by food, and then we get to figure out, okay, crispy fried tofu, supple steamed soy, bok choy, and Chinese-style lemon ginger poached salmon steaks. Then he texted me more ingredients, and yeah. Okay, the guy didn't care. Much. He's got his own problems. He's dying. So, okay, great, you got there, and you got to come out, and that day I got back something I thought was gone forever. The chance to be my whole self with my grandfather. Who gets to be their whole self with anybody? Really? I mean, obviously it's really difficult for gay people and all that stuff. It's difficult for transgendered people. I get that. But is there some point... Okay, this is what I thought. Okay. This is not talking about people in general. I'm talking about this guy. Could you find any way to get anywhere more beneath yourself than to write a thing on CBC and show this? Okay, so this is the big conclusion. That day I got back something thought I was gone forever, the chance to be a whole self with my grandfather. Every time I share one of these dishes with friends and my chosen family, back home in Kelowna, you've given yourself an Aboriginal name, what do they think about that? Every time I pull up one of my Guan's recipes and taste his flavors on my lips, I'll have his love and faith in me right here. Yeah, you had that all along, dude. You're deluded. Okay, so this is the last thing. This is how he describes himself. Shimshon Obadiah is an interdisciplinary artist and writer. No, you're not an artist and you're not a writer. Their work explores issues connected to their identity as a queer and trans neurodivergent. Queer means you've got an essence with, you've got an identity with no essence. Trans means you think you're the opposite sex. Neurodivergent. Yeah, that's mine. I identify as neurodivergent. Mixed race person of color. Most days they can be found writing, reading, and talking to writers on the Inspired Word Cafe podcast. And then you got a picture here with, he's sitting here with Grandpa. Looks to me like Chinese Grandpa. You don't know what he thought. You got not a clue, because Chinese people don't tell you what they think, number one. But I kind of know what they think. They don't give a shit about this. Hey, I bet you your Guan was something sexual himself. He had a wife, probably wouldn't have approved much, and so he didn't say anything. And now here's you showing up and making a complete asshole of yourself. Congratulations. Shimshon Obadiah